Welcome back to Let's Talk Business. I'm your host, James Price. Episode 22 is with Andrew Douglas. Andrew is founder and managing principal of FCW Lawyers here in the city of Melbourne, in fact, Lonsdale Street, Melbourne. And thank you, Andrew, for having us.
Oh, no, thank you for coming.
Really appreciate the time to chat and the time to get to know you and FCW Lawyers and all things workplace relations, I guess, which is one of the main elements.
It's probably about a third of our business. So
Right.
it was how we started 6 years ago, is that I left a large law firm and started with just a secretary and I. And from there, we've grown to over 60 of us in the last 6 years and up the eastern seaboard.
Yeah. And look, I mean, goes without saying, a lot of our audience are business owners, and workplace relations and people. There's nothing higher on the list, I don't think. So I mean, why did you have a focus on that other than your other aspects of your firm?
Personally, why I had a focus is I was a building construction lawyer, and all the force majeure clauses were industrial.
Yeah.
So 25 years ago, I was drawn down the Industrial Licensing Commission when a major development in the CBD was brought to a halt. And I thought, God, this is so much more fun than building and construction law. It was sort of a bloodbath. And everything was resolved within about 4 or 5 hours of argy-bargy.
Yeah.
I thought, this is magical, actually. If you think a bit, you can stop a lot of the problems that exist by being a bit reflective and not enjoining the fight, but going, what are the tools for actually fixing this and having a good financial outcome? So over time, the builders kept employing me, but I gradually moved towards the industrial side of it. We had less downtime through the use of force majeure because we had less industrial action, and we built relationships with the union at a respectful level, which didn't exist before. It was combative.
Yeah. So, I mean, we were just talking about your dad before, and you sort of said that one of his qualities was he was very upfront and frank, right? But my sense is, in listening to you talk about that conflict at the workplace, you have to be a good negotiator. Do you?
Yeah, I think to take this sideways just a fraction, I think when I got to about 45, I had a daughter who became very sick, and I was combative. Okay, that's who I was. So, as a competitive sports person, my brother and I would fight to get to the fridge first. If Mum said, go and get that, we would fight to get there, both of us. Yeah. And maturity, we won't do anything that has a smell of competition because we can't stop. But when my daughter got sick, I realised as I stepped back from things, we were being drawn into all sorts of fights which were costing our clients money, which were about my hubris sometimes, other solicitors' hubris. But they weren't about the subject matter of what the dispute was about. And the truth is, most of the things that cause you trouble are people that you've allowed to create trouble. So you created them. Yeah, but you treat them like they're on the outside, but you didn't put an ad on Seek saying, what a difficult person to destroy my business. Yeah. But over a period of 5 to 10 years, you've accommodated a series of behaviours because you won't have the discussion. My father would have had the discussion the first time it happened.
He wouldn't let it seethe.
No, he'd say, look, this is what good looks like. You did this. Why do you do it? Now, in that, my father was absolutely right. The next step was my father give you a belt across the chops for it, and that was very bad, okay? But when I was about 45, I had this epiphany. I'm only allowed to have one epiphany for the guys behind there. That's the religious part of it. But it was an epiphany, and it just said, this is just crazy.
Yeah.
I'm actually prolonging dispute rather than fixing it. And the first thing that you learn about that is just shut up. Just listen and realise the person who's creating a problem is actually yours. They're not an enemy, they're yours. They didn't start off being an enemy. Yeah. They are now. That's something you did, not just them. And the moment you can change that mindset to go, look, they're mine, I'm their God, I'm their creator. Genesis happened in my business at this time when I permitted this. Yeah. Then you can actually own it. And the moment you own it, you can step back and not be as highly sensitised to it. Because it's the excessive sensitisation to conflict that escalates it. When you don't feel that sensitivity, then it's just a person behaving badly.
Yeah, look, I love that because, I mean, and I feel for business owners, the last 3 years, very hard to get staff and
Yeah.
keep staff, and keep the business run rate as a result.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is, look in the mirror, Mr. Business Owner, because part of it is you, and you need to take responsibility for your team. The people that work for you are not just people that come in and come out under their own rules, so to speak. You can have an impact.
Well, look, that's true to some extent, but say in regional areas where there is a limited talent pool and where there is full employment, and in a number of our large regional centres, there is full employment. There is a swamp of people who come in and out who you need to fill a spot, but you know you're going to lose them, and you know they're going to cause trouble, and they're on the lower classification levels, and you've got to then think strategically, well, in my enterprise agreement or in my employment methods, how do I dodge the swamp? And what it means is I lift the classification or the rates, the mid-level classifications, to actually poach, to bring in people who stay and who are good. But if I keep engaging the swamp, I'm going to have this massive churn, but also a lot of damage to productivity and conflict. So part in regional centres is understanding you really do have a very limited talent base. Don't get caught going for no talent.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. We're talking about regional centres. I think you're originally from a regional centre called Ballarat. Is that right?
Yeah. They'd call themselves a city. Yeah.
Yeah. They're just over the hill there. I don't know whether I'm pointing in the right direction.
That way.
Yeah. So tell me about Ballarat. You grew up in Ballarat?
Yeah, I grew up in the main road of Ballarat. My dad worked downstairs, and we lived upstairs in a 9-square house with plasterboard. So you fart in one room, you kill the person in the next. It's not great. We caught trams to school, and my father was a good man, and when we come home and he'd open the door of his surgery and not take them, we'd play footy in the backyard or cricket in the backyard. He was competitive, so he'd hit you in the head when you went for a mark, just to remind you that it is a game.
So that's AFL, the real game, right?
Well, yes. But my father was like Tony, my brother, and I, was a competitive guy, but he had a passion for us, for us to be successful. And so he dedicated time. He went to every game we ever played and anything. He taught us, He was a rogue, so we'd play a thing called gnome cricket, which there was a bit of cement in our backyard, and we had this honed bit of wood and a golf ball. Yeah. And there was nominated gnomes, and if the golf ball hit the gnome, you're out. And when he got sick of you, he had a floating gnome that he said just was there, and you're out anyway, just to see you.
So he's just going to win, basically.
He had to win. Yeah. And you'd go upstairs, tears, and he'd go, "Stupid boy." Off he'd go back into work. But anyway, what it did teach us a lot about, I think, for both Tony and I, is being part of something that's connected and engaged and succeeding matters. If you're not succeeding, you're not breathing.
Yeah, is that because you need to feel valued?
Yeah, you need to belong. You need to feel you're something better than yourself.
Yeah.
When I was with my dad, for all his interesting attributes that he had, I felt really valued. I felt like the skills he was giving me were something he bestowed. They were gifts.
Yeah, right.
So I honoured them,
That's special, right?
Yeah, and Tony and I were chatting the other day, and we were both saying, for all Dad's foibles, we never went to bed at night not thinking we were something really special, that we were given a particular opportunity. Whether he was reading Old Possum's Book of Cats to us at night and making us recite them back so we'd learn the prose. And then he'd laugh. And we'd go, well, we don't even understand what this is about. But he was doing it to create something in us.
Did he create high standards?
Yeah, very high standards. So, and really quite, there's pluses and minuses. Some of them were a bit unobtainable. But Dad's view on things were life is about dreaming. It's about aspiring.
Yeah.
You can't be somewhere if you don't dream. And dreams are fragile. So to actually maintain it, you've got to feed it. To maintain the dream, it has to be fed, it has to be sustained. Then you can create that dream, but you can only do it. And you can see Dad was a lapsed Presbyterian through incredibly hard work and commitment, but you can't do it at all unless you're part of a team.
Yeah, very interesting. So would you classify him as a leader?
Look, he was capricious. So because he had a very strong mindset, people did like him, and he got on well with people, and people would follow his opinions on things. But he was prickly, If he didn't think you If he didn't think you were worth it, he'd let you know. And he'd let us know too. If we did stuff that failed, I made my first 100 in cricket in the semi-final I was a tiny kid. So I was open batting. These kids who were playing first senior cricket were part of this team. And I scored 100. I was battered, I was bruised, I got out for 112. And as I walked off, and we won the game as a result of it, my father said, "What'd you play that stupid shot for?"
Yeah.
So it wasn't easy. Does that make
No,
sense?
no,
So there were some good things in it. There were some parts that I wouldn't replicate, but I knew when I got home that night after cricket, we would spend half an hour in the backyard with my father throwing the ball exactly how I got out for me to learn not to play that shot again. And I get that. And I was happy about that.
So in a way, I mean, he gave you the hard news.
Yeah.
But he also tried to develop you beyond that.
Oh, yeah.
Post that.
He was part of the Joe DiMaggio's theory of, you can't be perfect, but if you practice perfection, you get excellence. That was Dad's theory.
That was his theory.
Yeah.
Right.
I think Joe stole it from him, but it was his. Yeah.
Do you have to be liked as a leader, in your opinion?
No, not at all.
No.
I think actually one of the things that Tony and I were chatting about, we've got a friend who is a little childlike in the need to be liked. And look, he's such a lovable person. It's very easy to give it to him.
Yeah.
But I don't hunger being liked. It's nice. Like it's a lovely thing when someone likes you.
Yeah.
It's even better when someone loves you. But I'd have respect any day.
Well, and it's interesting, we talked before, and you raised it, about being valued. So being liked is not necessarily being valued, is it?
Not at all. No. It's not a currency. Liking is not currency.
No.
Liking's hedonism.
Yeah.
It's a good glass of wine.
It's
gone, can give you a headache later, but it's just a glass of wine.
It moves on, it's transitory.
Interestingly, about when we're talking about dreams, it's really interesting to go somewhere where people don't dream. So my partner grew up in a small country town in Vietnam,
Right.
where she started working at the age of 5, 16 hours a day. And as we're driving into the town, because I'm a bit bigger than life sometimes, and certainly a lot bigger than her, she said to me, you be careful what you say. I said, what do you mean? I said, they can't understand anything. I said, no, you be careful what you say. Don't make a promise that you can't deliver. Don't do anything, because this town doesn't dream. Dreams hurt in this town, because tomorrow they have to get up and they have to work 16 hours a day.
And face reality.
Yeah, so, and she said, I learnt not to dream in this town. I had to escape the town to dream.
Wow.
You think of the sadness that sits behind the idea that you can't imagine a better world.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just tragic, isn't it?
It is.
Now, I don't completely get it, because I'm a white middle class boy who grew up in a country town with parents who told me I'm meant to dream.
Yeah. Aspirations land.
Yeah.
Look out there.
Yeah, then build the foundation, then just keep building the blocks underneath it. That dream can become real, to be presented with a place where you're not, where if you want to survive, you don't dream.
Yeah.
It's chilling, isn't it?
It is. It's interesting, isn't it? It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Does your partner dream now?
Yeah, I think, but it hurts her. It scares her. She's always fearful of failure, to the extent, as a yoga instructor, Toy still practices yoga 4 hours a day so that she doesn't fail.
Yeah.
Do you understand? That's like me going and studying for 4 hours a day before I do law.
Yeah, she just doesn't want to get it wrong.
She doesn't want, and she feels wrong quickly. Whereas I feel wrong land. It's like a brief punch to the chin.
Yeah.
And I go, okay, what have I learned about that? I move from her, it's judgment.
Yeah, and it has an indelible effect.
Yeah. And so it's an interesting, culture's a fascinating beast. And when we come back to workplace, Mary Douglas, when she spoke about culture, says culture's what happened when you put an organisation under pressure, and what are the behaviours that come out the top. And she said, so you look at it and you look at that behaviour, then you go, how much of that behaviour is hierarchical? The structure of an organisation. How much of it is based on autonomy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So then you overlay that with, okay, so we know where we are on that part, but how much of the behaviour which is hierarchical is blame-based?
Yes.
And how much of that is accountability? So where do you want to be as a culture or as an organisation? Sits more towards the right, which is saying I want to be autonomous and accountable. That's a skill base. That's a trust. It's
Yeah.
a whole lot of things. Take away trust. Take away dreams. You end up in a communist state.
It's tricky, right, though, because commercially, there's a bunch of the audience out there that are business owners that have slaved away for decades to build their business.
Yep.
And the consequence of a bad decision are huge, right?
Yes. Yeah.
They can affect their cash flow overnight.
Yep.
They can stuff the business. And so they're chugging along, keeping everything in order. But you're saying, well, actually, you've got to give trust and accountability. And they're saying, well, yeah, sure. But the reason this business is good is because I drive it and I control the decisions.
Yeah.
So
but I might be a Holden, not a Maserati. Yeah?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Possibly.
So if I want to be a Holden, that's okay. But unfortunately, Holdens aren't produced in Australia anymore. So the issue for us, and it's a hard part. Well, I'm a business owner. You know, we own a business, or I own several businesses, including a consulting and a national law firm. And a lot of what I do is outside of my skill base. But pain and failure has taught me I must identify what is my lane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, does this business work when I'm energized and present? Absolutely. And when I'm not, we have problems like December and January where we get hit in our budget and we have an ongoing cash flow issue going forward for a few. Why? Because I wasn't present, because I was switched off.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for your business owners, absolutely your value, who you are, what you drive as your leitmotif, what that business is the business. But the question you have to ask is, when do you create value and when you don't? And that's awful. You know, being 65 means the mirror's not kind. Yeah.
I have no mirrors in my house. I'm not even 65 yet.
But one of the nice parts about being 65 is when you look in the mirror, you're not trying to be anything else than 65.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you don't have to be clever or attractive or anything. You just are what you are. You've landed, unfortunately, and this is the clay you got, and you've got to work with it.
You've figured out that that's the best part.
And you've got to learn what you're good at and what you're not good at. Because when we started this business, I did Rob's job as CEO, Vicky's job as CFO, Sally's job as CEO. I did all those things. I spent 80% of my time doing the work I was worst at.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I got no pleasure from it. And I wasn't good at it.
No.
But the business succeeded. It succeeded despite itself by pure willpower of making people want to work for me because it was a good dream we're on.
Yeah.
But I was incompetent at it.
Yeah.
Now I can actually do what I love doing. And this is the happiest time I've been in my life. But I'm not doing the shit stuff that I was doing before, which I was bad at. So I don't want to be a Holden. I want to be a Ferrari. And in one lane, I go really fast.
So you're saying you've got to give that trust, right?
You've got to give it, otherwise you fail. And it's no fun.
Was that hard for you to give at one point in time?
Incredibly hard.
Yeah.
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 Look, it came when we decided to move out of a large law firm. And I moved out of a large law firm because we were losing all our talent. The behaviours in law firms are not flash. They're highly competitive. And competition is let loose.
Yeah.
It's seen as something which is actually good. Whereas I think all of us know what's good is collaboration, not competition. You just got to be courageous when people aren't good enough and say out.
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Yeah,
you don't have to
does.
compete to get there. You've just got to have the oversight that gets the best people in the room to do the right things. And so when I started on my own, I was left with this feeling that, okay, I've got to start again. I've got to take on some of the things that were good where I came from, but I've got to be willing to let go of a lot of things which I was critical of and try and recreate them. But as I tried to recreate them, I wasn't competent. And so I hired Rob, who was a consultant, and said, look, this stuff about how we engage people, it's not working, Rob, like, how do I get people to create this level of change in the organisation?
Yep.
How do I make it do? And he said, well, you've got a business plan, you've got to reduce the plan down to a weekly plan for the individuals, meet them weekly so they can see what is good. But then, Andrew, you have to honour it. If you say this is good, you can't go to the pub at lunchtime and get pissed with a group of mates. You've got to be present.
You got to walk the talk. Yeah.
And it has to be every hour, every day. And that was really hard because I liked
Going to the pub.
But I'm at 60. I had a range of 80 or 90 clients who were friends.
Yeah.
And so I had a nice lifestyle that went with it. But my clients don't care. The funny part about it is they like the fact that I ring them now as I'm coming to work, that I go down and stay in Colac and catch up with them for a dinner on a Friday night, that my partner comes down with me. We've changed that around so that our values are immutable. I'm not sure we spoke about the idea of a moral firm, but
I was going to ask you about that actually.
I think that was I told you can only have one epiphany, guys, and I'm up to number 2. So I know that's it. That's the end of the Old Testament for us. We're in a lot of strife. That's not a light. That's lightning. Was an awareness that if we want to succeed and if we wanted to attract talent and if we want to keep talent, we have to be something better than just okay. And so in my usual habit, I went and read everything that I could on, what are the theories around being good and the morality of good, and I started reading philosophy of being good.
Typical lawyer, I might say.
And ask my kids how that drives them crazy. But, you go to a body of knowledge to actually test a proposition.
Yeah.
And what it came out with is, look, morally good is identifying and celebrating the individuality of people within an organisation and building a capability structure around them that allows them to be the best version of themselves. So we normally build a capability structure from the top. We say, what do we need to do something? We create a series of position descriptions, and then we put people into them so that we're putting square pegs into round holes. And what moral philosophy said is, with my little add of touch to it, is look at what the capabilities you need as an organisation, then look at the individuals you have, how you can best utilise that individual capacity to achieve the greatest end. Then you maximise the output, but it must be in a just environment. So it must be an environment where everyone understands this is what good is. When you don't do good, this is what happens. The consequences are the same whether you're a $3 million earner or whether you're a $100,000 earner. There is no practical adjustment to morality. It is either good or it is not good. I'll tell you what I thought, that's right.
But who sets good, Andrew? Do you set good in your firm, in your business?
We as a group, the executive group, consulted for a while about what we look like as a group, and we came up with our purpose is to create value in what we do using exceptional people, okay? Because that's our source, that's our capital. But when we looked at our values, one was creating what is a moral good within the organisation. So one is, not surprisingly, pursuing excellence. And the last one is that team is first. And the reason we did it is, that's what our staff said. Look, we love this drive towards perfection, but we like the fact that we're allowed to do it in a collegiate way. But most of all, we like the fact that people are generous, they're good, but direct. So if you don't do something right, someone will talk to you straight away. They won't hurt you, they won't punish you.
But you'll know where you stand.
Immediately. And we will have these weekly discussions that we have with everyone based on a plan of what good looks like. So people have clarity from position description through to our values, through to our execution and measurement of technical skills. People know what good looks like. They know it every hour of every day.
Yeah, I love that. Hey, business owners, have you figured out what good looks like in your organisation? I mean, really, it's an interesting concept. It's very straightforward, isn't it? But I bet
it takes a lot of courage, because what it means is, confronted by a situation where, say, a high-earning person behaves in a way that's unacceptable, will you treat them the same as a low-earning person? The answer is you must. Because if you want to be morally good, you can't bend. You can't be flexible. Can't be your mate. Oh, but I've known him for 10 years. In our business, I've got people who've followed me through business for over 25 years who are part of this business. But everyone understands consequences are the same. So that's hard. And the other part is, leading good is not easy because we fail. James,
But is failure such a bad thing?
I'd like to answer the textbook, which is no, it's a method of learning, but repeated failure. The mistakes I make today are the ones I made at 3. I replicate the same stupid behaviour. Every time I get into conflict of a particular, I can smell me being bad. I can actually know, I've got a counsellor I go to see.
You know you're bad before you get there.
I know I can tell I'm going to do it. I can feel my father's mouth entering my voice as I'm about to say something, and sometimes I can't even stop it because the fact is our DNA wedges us. And when you put behind our DNA, there are some things which are unconscious. We don't know where it comes from, but it's out of our mouth before we've done it.
Yeah.
And the woman I see, Marie Slem, great woman, very, very funny woman, who's a great counsellor, will say, well, learn your personality, learn your risk, identify the circumstances where you will fail in, because we will, James, because we're wedged. We're going to get to that place where we say or do the thing we've done every moment of our life for our whole life. Get out of them, find a strategy. But if you're in there and you stuff it up, put your hand up really fast and go, I shouldn't have done that. That's not what I should have done. I breached everything I say we stand for. Yeah. And in the last week I've done that, and it's been really interesting to see the reaction of people. A bit startled.
That you admitted that?
Straight away.
Yeah.
But the amazing part, and this was a difficult conflict within our business because it was an acquisition that we're dealing with. It's built a much stronger bond because being able to be candid about your own failure allows other people to fail. So the textbook answer, failure can be good if there's a learning. Failure can't be good if it's repeated and there's no learning.
Yeah, very interesting. But in addition, I think one of the key things for me that you said there or inferred is get to know yourself really well.
Yeah.
Get to know your personality.
Know you're a Holden. Does that make sense? It's if we can use that great football game. I act for a coach in that great football game, and one of his comments when he came to a new club is he looked at the support staff and he said, they're all doing everything. They've all got a voice. He said they've got to stay in their lane.
Yeah.
They've got to be good at what they're good at, and they've got to keep out of the parts they're not good at. And he said, and as a coach, I know that better than anyone. There are things I am good at, and there's... So he has deliberately gone and engaged people who complement his skill base. It's enormously courageous because he has hired people who are at least as clever, if not smarter than him, but brilliant at what they do.
Yes.
And the next courageous thing he does is he listens.
Yeah.
So once they tell him something he doesn't want to hear, he's trained himself not to respond in the visceral way, which is his personality, which is get stuffed. He's a tough guy. He's trained himself to shut up for at least a few minutes, to let it land before he does any response. And if he still feels his heart beating the mad beat that it does, he goes, can we chat about this one tomorrow? Yeah. So he's learnt a series of strategies, but people around him feel enormously safe because he is open about what he's not good at.
Very interesting. I mean, I think there's a lot of elements in this discussion which fascinate me in a sense. I mean, we value businesses, right?
Yeah.
And it's surprising to say, but part of the value we put on business, if it's a valuable business, is an intangible value called goodwill.
Yep.
And it's hard to quantify it, but we do our very best because we're magicians at what we do to value it.
Yep.
But a lot of that comes down to some of the things we've been talking about just now, because the way a team reacts and its culture and performance and how it clubs together to do what it does usually displays in the number results or the qualitative performance in a customer's eyes or whatever. One way or another, it flows. And we're spending more time looking at culture in organisations that we value than we ever did before.
Oh, look, in our early acquisitions, we looked at numbers. Numbers in law are clean. They're billable hours, the realisation of those hours. It's growing a crop and getting the true price of the crop, no loss, no wastage. That's what good looks like. It's got great hygiene. When you're going to acquire businesses, you're inclined to acquire business where the hygiene's not so clean because you know that with just a couple of quick flicks, you can clean it up and you've grown 10% net on it. So it's good. Yeah. But the real due diligence we've learned over the last 2 years as we've grown, we sort of doubled in size over the last 2 years. One of the things is to speak directly to the senior lawyers who are in the group. And the things we look towards is their level of referrals. The way they describe themselves.
Yep.
Do they describe themselves as an individual? Do they describe themselves as a team? Are they generous to team members? Do they point out the weaknesses in others, the strengths in them?
Yep.
We look at, to the extent we're allowed to look at them, it's hard to get the HR records that exist there and absenteeism. It's interesting when you put those things together as a coloured map.
Yes.
The heat comes over part of the business very quickly, and you can see, particularly when there's siloed behaviour, it might be good for us to buy it because we can break the silos down and get the referrals. But if people are inclined to be standalone people, there's no value in the business because you can't change the behaviour.
So, and they're not sharing.
Yeah, my father did say one thing, which was you can only change people about 10%. He said, it's like people marrying someone because they're going to be a good person. It doesn't work out that way. That 10% are small level behavioural hygiene issues. They're not changes in attitudes. You're not going to change an attitude. So if you see someone who's self-righteous, determined and disengaged with other people, nothing you're going to do, they might change their language around it.
Yeah.
But that's how they're going to behave under pressure because culture works under pressure. The worst behaviour comes out under pressure.
Under pressure.
What we're trying to do culturally is to make the best behaviour. That means we can't have bad people.
So do you, if you go out into the field and recruit for people, do you recruit on attitude?
Yeah, we have a benchmarking methodology that we use, which is culture first. We believe we can build good lawyers because we practice differently to most law firms in the sense that we practice around a client-facing manager. So if you're my client, it doesn't matter what work you do, I will manage the work for you as the advocate.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because you need to feel safe across the business. You don't know who else is doing it.
So the expertise will be behind that manager.
Yeah, and that's an Asian model of doing law, is to, Andrew, and you ask Andrew to do the work and he will make it perfect and he will kill to make it perfect. Okay? That's our model. So when we're looking at people, we're looking at people who honour the model, which is anything they do creates value internally across the group and value for that client. They will not transact. They will think about, they'll dig deep into the industry, they'll dig deep into the client's business. They won't come to me with, I think this is the contract. They'll go, look, this person is a food processor. These are the types of issues. They have low margin. They have LD and Woolworths as a client, so they have very slim margins down to 3%. If we're going to get any short-term incentive for this manager, it has to be around quality because that's the way we make money is quality. They'll think like that. If they don't think like that, I'm not interested in them. And in fact, when we look at all our junior staff we have at the moment, they all come from business families, often small business families where they're hyper vigilant to what is success.
Because they've had it, they've lived it.
Yeah, and they're still going to their parents' house on the weekend doing warehouse checks.
Yeah, I love that.
And we want people with that level of mental agility where they're focusing on outcomes because, workplace law is an imperfect science, okay? But what it does say is there might be 5 different answers based on the capability of the organisation and the people in that organisation and what they think is valuable. How I provide the advice to you is I'll tell you how you can fix it, but then I'll tell you what'll work best for you.
Yeah.
If I don't have people who have you first, they'll just give you the answer. Then I'm a first-tier law firm. It'll cost you a fortune. You'll get the perfect answer, but you won't be able to do it. It's like all the tax fraud cases, with the people with 10 family trusts and things, and the ATO turn up and they don't even know they've got them.
Yeah.
So building legal solutions around people is understanding the people first and what matters to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we don't employ people who don't think like that.
So that's having a degree of empathy, right? Isn't it? And understand.
Yeah, look, certainly listening, wanting to listen. It's also having a bit of a love of business. We only act for business. We don't act for individuals. So we have a high net wealth category where we act for. But I don't want someone coming in the room to deal with you about valuations in business who hasn't thought about, okay, so what's James' business? How does he make money? What makes him excited about his business? If someone hadn't looked at a website of yours before they spoke to you, I would kill them, okay?
Yeah.
If they hadn't looked around and read a bit of stuff around valuation and, what is
got
goodwill,
themselves knowledgeable. Yeah.
how can they talk to you? The purpose behind the industry is to make sure that we do get what's going on, that we're advocates within the industry.
Yeah.
We're a member of boards and we participate in growing knowledge and advocating what that industry needs. We do get what the challenges are. And we focus on building talent across the specialisations in each industry group. And it means that if I'm acting for you, I'm not in the professional services group because I have too much vested interest. So I've stepped away from it. But I would go to Satiri, who's head of commercial, who runs the professional services group, and I'd say, look, James has come to me with this issue. To him, these are the types of issues that are very important. He's got this transaction for a client, but you need to keep him involved in the process.
Yeah.
I want you to set up a letter of engagement so there's authorisation for James' involvement throughout the process. And I want any legal professional privilege to cover him. And if you're going to have a major meeting, I need to be there. And Satiri will say, was the client going to pay for that? And they go, James will pay for me to be in the room because he knows that I'll get the best value, and I'll hunt down anyone who doesn't do what he needs.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
So it's an exciting process to do it that way, but it's not how most law firms operate.
So how did you this is a business model, right? And, I often talk to my clients about thinking carefully about the business model that they want to set up, that they want to live their business by. How did you come about this?
It is a hybrid. So in Australia, it's common to have industries, but when I was hiring lawyers in Singapore and Vietnam for my technology business, I kept meeting these one person. They'd say, no, this is your lawyer. And I'd go, but they don't even know the law I'm talking about. And yet I got fantastic results because Juan in Vietnam would say to me, I've brought this person in. And I go, why are they there, Jen? She said, well, this person's an expert in this. And I'd say to her, well, why are you here? And she said, so you get the best deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she was fantastic. To this day, I still use the service in Vietnam on anything we deal there because I absolutely know she has my back.
So it's a bit like, for my sins, I had a career in banking and finance. And there's a lot of negatives in banking, but there's also some positives. And in investment banking back in the day, we used to talk about the quarterback strategy, right?
Yep.
Which was the quarterback dealt with the client, and the quarterback would bring in the expertise depending on what the client needed to have value.
Yeah.
And so they would always be in the front and centre to the client.
I think it's critical for clients.
Yeah.
Clients, when I have what's called a Doug Father dinner. When I was a young litigator, I was nicknamed the Godfather because of my lack of generosity of spirit. And that sort of morphed into becoming Doug Father as I became a bit wiser. So I send out cards with Godfather sayings on them. And we have these dinners, and they're people I've known, both men and women, for 30, 25, 20 years. But when they come in that room and they ask me to do work, when they come to me on the day of my daughter's wedding and they ask for murder. No, sorry, I got distracted. That was the movie. But
get the Godfather.
Then they expect me to be front and centre.
Yeah.
Because I am them.
So just explore that a little bit. A business owner might have a couple mil turnover, might have 20 mil turnover, might have 800 mil turnover. Private business. They employ, tens, 20 people, 100, 500 people in a range of industries. What sort of a relationship, and this is not really a sales question, but what sort of a relationship should they have with a lawyer? Should the lawyer be front and centre as a trusted advisor, or should they just dip in and out when they need that? It's a bit like
I think you've answered the question, to be honest, because some people as business owners keep their own counsel. So I have an Italian mate who runs a very substantial business, over 100 million. Now, he and I are mates. We go and sit in Scotbury and I bring along wine, we eat food, we share food together. It's one of the nicest nights. But he uses me as a lawyer as a method of clarification, or in disputes when he doesn't feel he can control it, but he plays all his cards very close. That's the way he runs his business.
So clarification, do you mean it's a bit of a sounding board?
Yeah, he'll test things out. He'll go, look, we're thinking of doing this. What do you think? We do quite a lot of work for him, but it's not the intimate relationship that I have with many of my clients who would be, Andrew, could you drop round to my house tonight? There's some things I need to chat to you about.
Yeah.
So for a large group of my clients, I am a person who turns up with a bottle of red wine at 6:30 at night, sits down and we have dinner together and we talk about where the risk is on a particular issue that's happening. But with Leo, we do that as friends, but he keeps his advisors at arm's length. And it's like dueling advisors. I know when he's
Yeah,
chatting
yeah.
to me, he'll be chatting to someone else. And I'm happy with that. So I think people have got to find their place of comfort. I think it's always better using a lawyer to bring them in early, not late, because legal skills are incredibly clever at the front end. They're quite eloquent, the way you use law. And law collides, so there's many pieces of law hitting anything at one time, particularly in workplace, but workplace, commercial together have some real complexity. So getting in early before a problem arises, eloquent, precise and beautiful, surgical. But once the problem happens, it's a blunt instrument and everyone loses. So if you come in late, unfortunately, the only tools you've got left are a gun, and the gun has to be loaded. And at that stage, you've got to lose, because when you load a gun, you've got to be willing to fire it.
And you've got to pay for it as well.
And you've got to pay for it. And it means you are going to fire and they're going to fire back, and there's going to be injuries and there's going to be wounds. So part of our marketing strategy, candidly, is to be an intimate advisor. It is to have that deep level of connection, of safety and trust that exists there, so that people can talk to us beforehand, before things become bad. But the reality is, most people use lawyers when they decide to do a transaction, not when they're preparing for a transaction. Most people use lawyers when they've got a letter of demand. Most people use lawyers when there's been an unfair dismissal claim. They don't come to us where all our skills exist.
That you can mitigate some of the risks that might be
like
coming as a result of something.
It's like being a dad. You find out your kid hasn't gone to school for 2 weeks. It's a bit late. You know?
Well, and it's interesting, you know, we manage a lot of transactions either on the buy side when we're doing due diligence for a client, or on the sell side helping a client get value out of their business as a point in time when they're going through succession. And typically the ones that blow up, by example, are those where the employee relations issues and sort of sanity and matters around that haven't been dealt with appropriately. So there's been corners cut. And they all come to roost in a transaction because the people have got to transfer.
And nobody does due diligence. So, you know, when you're doing a major transaction, there is due diligence that you can do around people, but nobody does it.
No.
And even when you do it, nobody listens. So I'll go in and look at our due diligence risk. So you pull out all the contracts, you pull out what you're entitled to look at in HR files. You can smell where the problem sits, and then you present that, and nobody listens because they're interested in the money. People are so drawn to finishing things. Do you know? So,
why is that? Because we just spoke about, you know, culture and people being the difference between a Holden and a Maserati, right? But
because people lie. People like lawyers lie and say to you, just stick it in indemnity.
And it'll be covered.
Yeah, but the problem is the indemnity is a fuse, and beneath the fuse is a bomb. Because you think anyone is going to honour their indemnity.
Yeah, so you're almost creating another whole risk about honouring the indemnity, warranties, indemnities.
Yeah, rather than saying, actually, there's a cost to that. So let's deal with the cost now. Let's say, look, we're willing to wear that cost. Yeah, sure, put the indemnity, do all that sort of stuff, do it, but let's take money off the table. But when people go down the path towards transaction, there's such a level of anxiety, there's such a cost associated with it, that everyone wants to bring the end closer, but inevitably the end blows out, and they get caught up in issues around money, finance, all those issues, and it keeps blowing out further, and people's anxiety level gets higher. And when people's anxiety level gets higher, they get into a limbic state where they're not actually hearing what is being said to them. They're focusing on finishing and money. They're the only things they can hear, not because they're bad people, but because neuropsychologically they're stuffed.
Yeah.
They're not able to truly hear anymore, so they can only focus on the things that they can hear, and that is money and completion.
Yeah.
And so the issues that make business successful are the things that sit in the wings. They're not the machinery on the ground. They're the age of the machinery. They're whether it was machinery from Taiwan, which has a limited shelf life, or whether it was German machinery.
Yeah.
It's whether there's been planned maintenance done on it, or whether there hasn't been planned maintenance. But if you get in a transaction, how many people look at the maintenance on the machine?
Very few, yeah.
And yet, shouldn't you?
Yeah, of course.
Isn't it the very heart of what that machine?
Well, it's productivity, right? If the
Yeah.
machine's not going to work for you, you're not going to deliver the value that
Yeah, if you're not going to get capital utilisation, you're in real trouble.
Yeah.
So people focus on the value of the capital rather than the capability of the capital. Now, that's the same with machinery as it is to people. No, it's 120 headcount. We can probably knock that down to 110. How? How do you know capable? How do you know whether they're capable of doing it? How do you know you couldn't knock it down to 70 because there's a bunch of bums working there?
Yeah.
What do you know about it? People focus on headlines. They don't focus on what's beneath the headline.
Fascinating. Sort of a side issue, though. We're talking about transactions, succession.
Yep.
Right? I work with a lot of business owners and clients through the succession process. And you mentioned that, your practice includes advice around succession. So think of some young business owners in their mid-30s. Might be husband and wife or two partners in business. They've both got families. The business has been going for, let's say, 8 years. It's growing, but it's gone through ups and downs. But they're in the early stage of their journey. Knowing what you know from a legal perspective, but also from a commercial perspective, what's the advice you'd give them around future succession planning, do you think?
Yeah, I think where I'm normally brought in is that I'll commonly attend the strategic retreat, and they're looking at what they're going to do, where they want to be. If they're talking to me, I'll say, well, could we go beyond 3 years? Could we go beyond a business life cycle to 2 or 3 life cycles so we can see where we're going to land? Let's assume that one of your children are going to be very sick during this time. Let's just assume that one of you is going to split up from a partner. Let's assume the worst and let's chuck it on the table. And then say, do the structures I have contemplate that level of risk? Do I have insurance in place? Do I have the types of things I need to provide the longevity? And the other part is, do I want to be with this person for 10 years? Because it is a real issue. And that means, what is it that you're both really good at as two partners? Is this a divisible business? And as I have those conversations, because I normally open with these things, but I warn people, I do intakes beforehand so that people know what I'm going to say. Part of it is to remind them that nothing is set, that you don't have to do tomorrow what you did today. You don't actually have to do that. You can actually do better things tomorrow, and it might not be together. But what you can't do is buy a car and drive it for life. It will break.
Yeah.
So it's looking at what happens. Do I upgrade the car? Do I get... So the most recent one was the use of venture capitalists inside a business. And they said, look, we want to get venture capital in because we can grow really fast. And I said, well, they're going to demand a 20% return and you're making a 12% net return.
Yeah.
What are you going to make?
Yeah.
And they went, but no, we'll grow. And I said, no, but what will you do for 3 years? Because you'll get nothing for 3 years.
Yeah. How are you going to survive?
Yeah. And they sort of look at me with this sort of weird look and I said, have you looked at what they've offered? And they went, no. And this is the risk. My father's thing about dream was founded in a Presbyterian ethic, which was, dream, but build the foundations, build the house.
Yeah.
Don't dream wildly.
Yeah.
Aspire to something you can achieve, and then build it. Be deliberate.
So are you the reality test in those discussions then? Often, do you feel?
Oh, look, I think so, and I'm also the person who calls stuff which is bullshit.
Yeah.
I'm numerate, so when they're telling me about how they're performing and I go, no, your net earnings after tax are not that good.
They don't add up.
They don't add up. There's something wrong in here. It's not going to work that way. Yeah. And, as you grow, you're going to have a cash flow crisis. Do you understand, as you acquire that next business you were talking about, you're going to have to fund it for 6 months and get nothing back. Do you know that?
Yeah.
But as I said, people go because they want the end. They don't understand the bit in the middle. And the last part is, James, we can't be friends for life.
No.
And business creates unique pressures on people, harder pressures at times than marriage. Your aspirations change. Who you want to be changes. What matters in life changes. You might have more than one epiphany.
Yeah. Well, today is witness to that.
Witness to that.
Yeah.
But it means that as you're travelling this journey, you're going to get knocked sideways a number of times, and you can't expect the person next to you to be resilient to that.
Yes.
So you have to build in communication structures all the way through the business. And you've got to say, look, what is your long-term plan? Is it together, really together? And as you grow wealth, are you going to invest privately? Are you going to invest collectively? Are you going to reinvest in the business? Because James, you want to keep putting everything back in the business so that you have a strong capital base. Andrew, you want to make profit.
I want to draw it out.
Yeah,
I want to spend it on my commercial property or whatever.
Yeah, you're two different people.
Yeah.
And it's not a marriage, it's a business. So can we write down the things each one of us really want to do with our lives? Let's just put it up there before we do any simple SWOT or anything. Let's just talk about our own aspirations and dreams. And I'll tell you what you've told me. And then I write it up and I say, it's not a surprise because I've told you he's going to say that, but
look, they're different guys.
Yeah, can you see the incongruity? Now that can be very powerful. That means you can do extraordinary things, but it means you can blow up. So the answer is, when we do a business plan, let's address the incongruencies first. And let's be honest with each other about what's our bandwidth for that difference.
Yes. Yeah.
How can we use it constructively? And if it goes wrong, what does our shareholder agreement say? What is the valuation tool we're going to use?
Yes.
You know, let's talk about when things go bad. You know, in wills and estates, who's got the insurance here? Where's the key man insurance for you, because you're the person who creates the value. You're great at doing this, but that's the value. Yeah. So that has to be insured. To buy that person out, how are we going to do that? That's insurance.
And what happens if that person gets terminal cancer?
Yeah. Yeah. So where's succession? Where's the skills that sit within it? So yeah, I'm an advocate for risk.
Yeah, but risk's a positive thing, right?
I think so.
Isn't it? Like I think the trouble is, as business owners, sometimes we think of it as a negative thing. Oh, that won't happen. That's too negative. We've got the best relationship and we're going gangbusters and we've been together 5 years. Why do we need a shareholder deed? You know, all that's. But I think actually, like, risk is about return, isn't it?
It is. And look, so our business has a risk matrix we use. So when I look at where a high risk, one of our largest risk, without doubt, is someone hacking in and getting private information, because it would destroy our reputation, damage our client base, particularly some of our clients who would be incredibly harmed by it and would hurt our solicitors. So we spend a lot of money providing those layers of protection. But our major risks are single client risks. So it's a solicitor who has 60% in one client.
Yes.
Huge risk.
Concentration risk.
Yeah. So there's a whole lot of risk that people ignore. You know, when I first started law and when my daughter got sick, I broke away so I could take care of it. And I had 3 clients, which was lovely, you know, like they were fantastic clients. And I could work flexibly. This is, 15 years ago. I could work flexibly.
Yeah.
Clients, they were Australia-wide, they didn't care. If I worked from an airport, they were happy with that. When I went to another firm, there was regime change in 2 of those clients and wiped out 80% of my work after I'd just been bought. So I had to create a whole new work. Now I did it, but I worked around the clock to build new clients. But the next clients I built were people with 10%, not 40%.
Yeah, so you thought about the portfolio.
Oh, I did. I completely changed the method by which I could have gone and got similar sized clients. My firm would have said wonderful, but I realised it's just too risky. Whereas if I got SMEs rather than larger clients, I'd get $100,000 to $200,000 of work from each of them. I'd have these lovely personal relationships with them. I'd be invested in their family. I'd learn things. I'd have fun, but I had safety.
Yeah, and look...
And that's our practice. Our practice is built entirely around those relationship issues of, we do have a couple of very, very large clients, but they're based on people who move to that and we stay there.
Yeah, but I think that's very important. I mean, in valuing businesses, we look very, very closely at client portfolios, no matter what the industry is. And I say to business owners, look, it's just like a share portfolio. I mean, you can have a mix of high and low and medium earning stocks across a range of industries.
Yep.
Or you can have a couple of big kahunas and a couple of roughy mining stocks and have volatile return. And everything in between. But the main thing is to think about it as a portfolio.
And look, think of meat processors who 10 years ago had China, which was premium price of meat.
Yep.
So that's where the real fat was. It's probably a bad joke to make in the meat industry. So.
No fat anymore.
No fat anymore. Well, certainly in my wagyu there is.
Intermuscular.
Yeah. And they took on cash flow with Woolworths or Coles.
Yeah.
We fell out with China. Could export meat very easily all around the world. There was no shortage of clients, but the margin fell out of it. So the margin fell out of the whole business because China wasn't a huge chunk of sales, but it was premium pricing.
Yeah, that's right.
So it just shows you again
how it can impact your lot as a result.
That's right. So it's the same as farmers choosing what they're going to sow. Yes, you can plant cash flow, or you can plant cash flow and high return based on market expectations of where you're going to land.
Yeah.
But what you can't do is just plant cash flow.
Yeah.
Because you'll die and you'll be squeezed. And if you look at the potato growers of 30 years ago who got rich prior to McCain's and people coming in and sweeping all those people up and then reducing the prices down, we've got the same with our supermarkets doing exactly the same to food manufacturers, food processors, farms and the like. You've got to make sure that you lawyers, you have that mix of people, mix of clients, but primarily you want high value, high margin clients, because when you get into price, it's a race to the bottom.
Yeah, that's right. And your margin will suffer otherwise. Yeah. I got 3 trick questions for you.
One's going to be hard enough for me.
Yeah, one. Oh, dear.
4 coffees in, remember, it's not fair.
4 coffees in, 3 questions. Firstly, had your time over again in the business that you're in, what would you have done differently as a business owner? Is there something that you could point to that you'd say, well, if there was one thing I could have done differently, knowing what I know now in my business journey, this is what it is?
I think unquestionably that understanding that I had when I was about 45 about not combusting issues and engaging, listening and healing stuff is the biggest learning I've had, both personally in my life, but also in law. And if I look at my time over, there was a period of time where I dealt with industrial action all the time and enterprise agreements. Now, most of my clients do have enterprise agreements, but we don't have industrial action. Why do we do it? Because we consult, we engage. The leadership are more important than the union. People are more comfortable with the leadership inside the business because of the training we've given them, and therefore the unions don't get the leverage, but there's good returns because they're generous and fair. So that learning about listening, finding out why people do things, and then trying to find methods of connection rather than blowing stuff up is good learning personally, but as a lawyer, it's the growth of our business. Our whole business builds on that model.
Nice. Second question. Looking back over that journey, what's the best thing you've done to drive the business, do you think? If you had to pick one thing that's made you successful in business to date, what is it, do you think?
It's relationships.
Relationships, right? Which is a little bit akin to some of those learnings that you mentioned.
Yeah. And I'm a curmudgeon, by the way, so although I'm being generous and happy now, the reality is when you've been trained for 35 years in 6-minute units and you're a cerebral person and an introvert, sitting inside my room thinking clever thoughts, doing stuff is my natural habitat. It's like the koala. He's a tree, me's an office, okay? Getting out of my habitat, which is my brain, and being with people and listening to people.
And sharing you.
Yeah, sharing.
Yeah.
The not so lawyer looking me, being me. That's the other thing at 45, I stripped suits off and I stopped being a lawyer in the sense of what being a lawyer looked like and just started allowing me to be me.
Who you are.
Yeah. And immediately my relationships were stronger because there was, it was me. It was a level of authenticity, and the things I was fascinated about, I'd started asking. I didn't sit and wait for it anymore. I was inquisitive. I wanted to know what they were doing. Yeah. So, and that actually helped me because I said, I am an introvert. If you put me in a group of 100 people, I cringe. Yeah. But building those intimate relationships was a place of real safety for me. So it was great for me because it allowed me to be me and enjoy it. Yeah. At the same time, it created enormous internal wealth inside the business. And then that understanding if I know someone, if I know their business, I can really help them.
And that unlocked the business growth.
That's this business, yeah. That's the single strongest driver behind our business.
I love that. Last question, number 3.
I'm starting to sweat now.
Well, someone young going into business in law, or let's say professional services, what advice would you give them? Don't go into business?
Oh no, I think business is wonderful.
Why?
There's not too many times in your life you're given a blank canvas, okay? Nearly everything you do in your life you're given a tunnel, and you've got to go down that tunnel, and there might be a few pathways left and right. Some are fatal, some are not fatal, some are good, some are bad. Not educated in what they are, you just go down the tunnel and you make some shocking mistakes, and sometimes you land on your feet, and life's got a lot of luck in it, okay?
Yeah.
And I think I've been very, very lucky by the people I've met along the way, like meeting you. I'm lucky.
Yeah.
But starting a business is a clean canvas. There's no tunnel. You're the author of your own woes, you know. Existentialist philosophy would say from the moment you're born, you're accountable for your actions.
Yeah.
And I agree with it. But when you have this blank canvas, you're given the benefit of being able to say, what am I good at? So the most important question you ask as a businessman is, who am I?
Yeah.
Who am I really? What am I good at? What am I not good? Don't do things you're not good at. That's dumb. But the things I'm really good at, actually study hard, be deliberate about making yourself great at them, because that's the only way you will succeed in modern business, is doing what you're great at. You'll never succeed by being mediocre. You know, the worst thing you can say about somebody is, he's a nice bloke, isn't he? Oh, it's a terrible thing to say about someone, because what you're really saying is,
how nice is he?
Yeah, well, that's all he's got.
Yeah. I mean, we talked before about like versus value.
Yeah.
Nice and like are kind of similar words, right?
Yeah.
But they're not as authentic and deep and as sort of, you know, relevant as value.
No. So you're going to interview Richard Amos, okay?
Richard Amos, our friend.
Yeah. So no, Richard was a person who stood up and supported Hawthorn when it nearly collapsed as a football team. Okay.
Yes.
I'm a Hawthorn supporter. We
I
met on the Oval.
I know you are.
Okay.
God love us.
He is one of the sweetest people I know, but he is singularly one of the smartest people I know in what he does every day. And we use him all the time in communications around high-risk reputational damage. Why do I do it? Because he's just got integrity. I give him a question, he goes away, he thinks about it, he always comes back and cross-examines me on a whole lot of issues that relate to where risk, which I never saw.
Yeah.
And he produces simplicity. Now, the greatest skill in communications is simplicity, not complexity. And he has this unique talent of being able to create something that resonates with a truth. It is true, and it stops reputational risk.
Yeah.
Now, that is an incredible talent. So do I like Richard? I actually love Richard. Richard's one of the people I could spend time with every day happily.
Yeah, yeah.
But my measure of Richard is not that. I'm blessed by that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but you got a lot of value from his expertise.
But what he does for my business every day, and he works with us nearly every day in the high-risk stuff we deal around safety, around sexual harassment cases, around child safety, around all the things that we live in, he provides me deliberate, predictable outcomes to highly volatile, unpredictable circumstance. It's unique.
Yeah, I love that. And you did well with the 3 questions. Andrew Douglas, thank you for having us in your house and talking to us about you and your journey, both personal and business, being so generous, and also about FCW lawyers and where your expertise lies. Really appreciate it. It's been a blast.
Oh no, look, thank you very much, James. It's not often I get to shoot off about my favourite topics. Me.
Hawthorn. What an episode with Andrew Douglas. FCW lawyers, his journey from Ballarat through to a national law firm and the learnings along the way. And there were many, but I think the one that resonated with me most was understand and know yourself, know what you're good at, and figure out how to deliver real value to your clients and to the people around you. I hope you enjoy it.